author and an amazing book. And thank you so much for joining us here. In case you don't know the Institute or me, I'm Anna Abram, principal of the Margaret Beaufort Institute. And this is a great joy and honor to celebrate Gemma Simmond's book. Gemma is not only a well-known writer, scholar, and director of the Institute of Religious Life here at Margaret Beaufort. She really embodies what our institute is about. As you might have heard me saying this before, we're like a tripod, working on research, teaching, and pastoral outreach. And Gemma embodies this in a most perfect way. Very often we celebrate her scholarly books or chapters and her scholarly work, her really high quality research, her amazing pastoral work, and very often part of this pastoral work is appearing now like a celebrity on so many media, in so many media outlets, but also teaching. One of the most popular courses in Ignatian spirituality are taught here by Gemma. So for us, this is a real pleasure and joy to have you with us and to hear about your book. And also special welcome to the publisher, Bible Reading Fellowship, and Tracy, who brought some of the books, and there will be a possibility of, hopefully, if the connection works, to purchase Gemma's book. So without further ado, I invite Gemma to talk about her book, and then after Gemma's talk, Sean Ryan, Vice Principal of the Institute, will chair the discussion. So thank you again, and enjoy this session with us.
Anna, thank you so very much, and thank you to all of you for coming. I thought maybe 2 or 3 people would come, so it's really lovely to see people from all over Cambridge and from different areas of my life and of the Margaret Beaufort Institute's life. Lovely and very kind of you to have come, and thank you so much to Tracy and the Bible Reading Fellowship, who I have to say I do have several publishers, and BRF have been far and away the most user-friendly and the people who've been most supportive to me as an author. So I really would like to thank the BRF enormously. And when they first talked about, my doing a book, whose aim is to help ordinary people to get more deeply into Advent, there was quite a lot of discussions what we should call it, and the notion came up of calling it Donkey Roads and Camel Treks, and a big question, what on earth is that all about? And one of the things that I notice every year, because people do at least know better on the whole than to send me Fat Father Christmas cards, they tend to send me religious ones. And everything always looks so easy, Mary and Joseph on their donkey, and it's lovely and clean, and it's warm and it's furry, and they're just gliding along. And the 3 wise men, looking stately on their camels. And I know that when I had my sabbatical between the time when Sean and Anna and I were together at Heathrow College in the University of London, and then moving here, I had the wonderful privilege of having a sabbatical. And during the sabbatical, I went to stay and study at the Tantour Institute that's just over the Bethlehem Gate, between Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And one of the things they invited us to do was to go on a trip to Mount Sinai. I thought, great, bring it on, And when we got to Mount Sinai, I looked at this enormous mountain, and they said, yes, we'll be getting up kind of in the middle of the night and walking up the mountain. And I just thought, no, I know that my knackered old knees are not going to be able to manage that. And they said, never mind, here's a lovely camel for you to go up the mountain on. And I looked at the camel looked at me, and I thought, well, I'm fairly well padded, this should be a doddle. Oh my goodness, have I ever made a bigger mistake. It is the most excruciatingly uncomfortable thing to ride up a mountain on a camel. Possibly, I actually do give a fairly vivid description of it here in the book. And it just made me think, you know, all this stuff about lovely camel tracks and donkey roads, they are unbelievably uncomfortable. The gulf that there is between the Christmas cartooness and the actual tough reality of what they are describing. Very, very welcome, Adele, thank you. And of what they are describing in terms of the journeys that the people did have to make during Advent, in the run-up to Christmas. I thought this is something I can talk to people about, because I know from my years in prison ministry, for instance, that for many, many people, actually Christmas is quite problematic. It's problematic because maybe it's not the kind of happy family time that we see on the TV adverts. We know that there's always actually a rise in domestic violence during the Christmas period, because being closed in with your family and a great deal of alcohol, never a very good combination if things are volatile in the first place. And then there are people who've lost loved ones and for whom Christmas as the happy family time is actually a very sad reminder. Or people who are in situations of poverty and are not able to put on the table the great Christmas extravaganza that is being published and pushed in all the shops. So I wanted to do something that helped people to get real about Christmas and get real about Advent, but also to discover the true treasure that there is at Christmas. And some of you have already either heard me or read me on Facebook tell about the fact that I've recently been in Australia. And while I was in Australia, I happened to be in a hotel with a TV in the bedroom. This is a very rare thing for nuns, let me tell you. So, you know, I was going to make the most of it. So I lay back, and it was prime time TV and mainstream TV. Please do not think I was watching some dodgy channel. I was not. And the adverts came on, and an advert came up for an Advent calendar from a sex shop. Just get your minds around that for a moment. A sex shop Advent calendar. I just lay there with all my fuses blowing, thinking, what is this? And what do these people think Advent is, or Christmas is for that matter? And the idea, I do have a bit of a rant, a very small, a rantette, a small rant in here about the commercialisation of Christmas and the idea of Christmas as this just elongated consumer fest, which of course is over by Boxing Day, and you're clearing the decks for the sales and for Valentine's Day, which is the next big thing on the horizon that you can sell people things for. But it actually also made me think rather more deeply, okay, let's go with the notion of the sex shop Advent calendar just for a moment. What these people are peddling is desire, but it's a fake desire, or it's an artificially stimulated desire. I mean, I did waste a couple of minutes of my life wondering what there was you could buy in a sex shop that was so small that you could put it behind the window of an Advent calendar. And I decided really not to go there. Not to go there. But actually, if we look at the scriptures, the Advent scriptures, they all are about desire, and they all are about longing. And, you know, the Messiah is spoken of as the desire of nations. And it seems to me that part of our problem in our very, very kind of media-obsessed world is precisely that we no longer desire anything, because everything's got to be instant gratification. And the idea of waiting for something and longing for something, or waiting and longing for someone to come into our lives and celebrating the longing itself, I think has become very alien to our current secular society. And yet here we are, actually about to go into a season where it's all about longing and it's all about desire. I love to quote St. Augustine on this, who of course I like to think of as the patron saint of desire. He was the one, after all, who made up that splendid prayer, Lord, give me chastity, but not yet. An honest prayer, if ever there was one. And he talks to the early Christians of his community about desire, and he says, the whole life of a good Christian is holy desire. What you desire, you cannot see yet, but the desire gives you the capacity so that when you do receive it, you will see. This is our life, to be exercised by desire. Those two lines have stayed with me ever since I first read that quotation. The desire gives you the capacity. And my hope is that in writing a book that helps people to spend a little time getting in touch with their deepest desires. I teach Ignatian spirituality, and at the end of every exercise in the spiritual exercises, Ignatius says to the guide, remind the pilgrim to think about what it is they desire and to articulate to God that which I desire, id quod volo. And if this book can help us to get a bit more in touch this Advent with our deep desires, remember that the desire gives you the capacity. The capacity for what? The capacity to receive the real Christmas gift that God is trying to give us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Gemma, and for introducing us to the desire that's leading us towards Advent. So there's a chance now for some questions or comments to ask Gemma about her book or about Advent. And who knows, sometimes when you're up the front, they can ask you anything, but particularly in relating to the book, ideally. So who would like to ask a question or a comment?
You're welcome to do so. I can't promise I'll know the answer.
Just raise your hand, anyone who would like to. Yeah. Yes.
It's just a comment, really. I too go into prison a lot, and it's a very lonely time.
Yeah.
Prisoners hate it. I shall go in 3 days for Christmas, and we spend time talking about how they're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
This is not a religious group at all, but it's grim, really grim.
Yeah. And so, for us to remember that, I think, and remember, apart from anything else, to pray for those who aren't going to have the fairy tale Christmas is an important thing.
That's why I pray for them at Mass at 7.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Petra.
Thank you, yeah.
So, obviously Advent comes around every year, whether you like it or not. So we've all had a lot of Advents one way or another. Gemma, is there anything special or particular about this Advent or Advent at this time that you'd like to speak to?
Sure, and I think I might actually stand up again. Let's just do that. I think I always find it important to think about Advent in context, And of course, there was at one point a teaching that said, well, the very moment when Christ was born, traditionally, was in the middle of the Pax Romana, and it was a time when everything was peaceful. Well, it might have been peaceful from the perspective of the Roman invaders. I don't think it was very peaceful from the perspective of the people who were under the boot of the Roman invaders. And I think it's very easy for us to sort of soften up Christmas in some way and to make it like a fairy tale. And yet if we actually do look at the Christmas story, I mean, what have we got? We've got, a young couple who've got no idea where this baby has come from, giving birth in the most insanitary conditions imaginable, not being able to find anywhere decent to stay, having to cope just in the immediate aftermath of giving birth with the advent of strangers, walking in and talking about revelations that they've had, and foreign sages turning up with frankly the most useless gift you could possibly give to a new mother, and then finding that, you know, a murderous leader is trying to kill the child and then running off as refugees to Egypt. I mean, it connects with so much of our current world reality. So I would want to say, I think every year the invitation is for our Advent, our reflection on Advent and Christmas to be real. And, you know, if we are praying, as we do every year, for Christ to come into the world in a particular way, of course he already has come into the world and he has already saved the world. But I think he needs to come into our little world and our hearts to make us more effective evangelizers of the real Christian message. And this year, I think more than anything else, it's the year, after all, that we've just had the holy year of hope, you know, the pilgrimage of hope, and to think of ourselves as pilgrims of hope. And I think the invitation this year in particular, how can we become, all of us, pilgrims of hope to a hurting world? I have been very closely involved, as some of you know, with the Church of England in recent years, and in particular the community of St Anselm up at Lambeth Palace. And so I had a kind of ringside view, if you like, of all that has been happening there, and have tried to accompany all those involved with as much kindness and as much support and solidarity as I could. But I know that there are many, many people within the Anglican Communion and in other churches really hurting at the moment because of issues about sexuality, or issues about ecclesiology, or issues about the abuse of children, so many other questions that threaten our sense of peace. And if we can be pilgrims of hope in the midst of that, in the midst of a broken church, as well as a broken world, then I think we'll have understood something important about Advent.
Thank you, Gemma.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment about prison chaplaincy. I was involved for 10 years at Little Hay, and one of the joyous, best events of the year was the carol service in the gym. Hugely well attended, well, mainly because there were huge mince pies at the end. But rock band, readers, it was soloists, but nobody quite knew who was staff, who was chaplain, who was one of the guys, because it was a congregation filled with joy and love, and everybody was equal in that place.
Lovely.
A very happy place.
When I was a volunteer chaplain in Holloway, we had a knitted crib, a lovely knitted crib, which we used to put out at the beginning of Advent. But we had a box full of spare baby Jesuses because the women kept stealing baby Jesus. Baby Jesus kept disappearing, and he wasn't being taken away for a laugh. He was being taken by a woman who wanted him in her cell with her. And you know, many of these women were separated from their children. So, you know, the thought of, we had to make extra baby Jesuses to make sure that you know, he stayed in his crib. There's something very poignant about that. And again, in what way can we bring, you know, the love and the joy of this newborn child into the lives of people who need him so badly? I think that's a question for us at Christmas. We don't necessarily do that by knitting a model of him, but I think we do that by being him in some way, you know, by communicating his presence to people who really long for it.
Thank you. Ian. Yeah.
Thank you, Gemma. Do you think that there's anything we can discern more in terms of hope of unity, church unity, because you're involved across many denominations, and how do you discern, or how can you help us to understand?
I absolutely do. I think that's the greatest gift that we as Christians, and isn't it fabulous how many denominations there are represented here, and it's wonderful. You know, the first thing we need to do is to pray with each other. Good grief, you know. I'm old enough to remember the first big ecumenical service that I attended in an Anglican church in Shaftesbury in Dorset. I must have been 11 or 12, and we'd been marched along there by one of the nuns for an ecumenical service for the week of prayer for Christian unity. And I'm the daughter of a Welsh chapel nonconformist and a French Catholic. I mean, it doesn't get much more ecumenical than that, basically. And I remember there came a moment where we were all invited to say the Our Father together. Panic stations! We were being asked to pray in a non-Catholic church. And so the whisper went all the way up along the line. Sister, are we allowed to do this? And the whisper came back down the line. Don't be so silly, of course we are. Why do you think we're here? Oh, right. Then it dawned. So all of a sudden, there we were, saying the Our Father together, but it was an Anglican church, so they had a funny bit at the end. What was that all about? And actually we have, I know that is a long time ago, but we have come a long way since then. And I think the first thing for us to do is to rejoice in the scripture, in the word of God that's been given to all of us, and not to weaponize it against each other, but to use it in a way that we can all see. We are all of us pilgrims. We're all of us discovering the truth that is greater than anything that any of our churches can ever say. And I think by praying together, and I think also something like Lynn's house, which is represented here with Carol, where, you know, we have a community here across Cambridge of loving friendship and care and mutuality between people generally from the university and our core friends who are living with some form of intellectual disability. And the riches that come, as you know very well, Ian, the riches that come from that friendship, you know, it's not people like me being charitable, it's people like me opening ourselves to the gift that is given to us by those who perceive life differently and very often perceive life so much more kindly than we do. And so, you know, I think in that kind of outreach and in prayer, and yes, there is a theological work to be done, which is what we're doing here at the Margaret Beaufort Institute and across the Cambridge Theological Federation, trying to find our way to a deeper understanding of truth mutually. But I think there's lots of prayer and lots of rejoicing and lots of partying to be done that can make ecumenism a reality. Yeah.
Okay, Sean, can I just
Yeah.
just to on Ian's point and what Gemma just said, I think it is also lovely that your book is endorsed in such an ecumenical way, where Isabel Hamley, who is a principal of Ridley Hall, and James Martin, a Jesuit from the Catholic from the States, but also David Ford from Lynn's house and distinguished professor. So that's ecumenical feel and endorsement is really important also for us promoting the book as the Institute, and really tribute to the publisher, because you are really encouraging this ecumenical exchange, and thank you so much for doing this, and to everybody at Biblical Reading Fellowship, because it's a remarkable organization.
So thank you. And Tracy, I think you wanted to say a word towards the end of this.
I do. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry about the difficulty with payment, but I think we've now sorted it, so it should be fine. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to work with Gemma. It's theologian, very well established, and we've been really privileged to kind of walk with you in this journey. And yeah, it's been a lovely book to read through as I've been preparing marketing materials and things, and I think a lot of people are going to find this so helpful and useful this Advent. So yeah, thank you for partnering with us to bring this, and yeah, let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again, indeed. Yes, David.
Before you get overrun by the rush of book signing, You mentioned education, particularly at the young age.
Yeah.
I'm so old, I'm completely out of date with education of any religious sort at a young age. What is, all of us here understand what you're talking about, but what is there in the national curriculum that guides people, and should we be augmenting that in some way? Is it possible? Because the majority of Catholic children are educated in non-Catholic schools. I just wonder where we're getting with that.
I hate to do this, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to pounce on Daniel, because Daniel actually is at the very heart of teaching at our Mary Ward School here in Cambridge, at St Mary's, Cambridge, and has been holding together the RE department for many years, and is now working, as Mel worked before him, in promoting the religious spirit and ethos of the school. So I just wondered, Daniel, if you might have anything to say.
I can tell you about the known unknowns,
Yeah.
which is that there's been discussion for a while about at government level producing a national curriculum, a national framework for RE in school. My experience in the Mary Ward School is as an independent school, so there's a bit more freedom there.
Yes.
I can come back to that in a minute, really, because that is also shrinking and being restricted. In a recent-ish document, that it was mooted that this was something that the Department for Education were going to move towards a national framework. Previously, within state non-religious secular schools, the curriculum has been agreed at local level, so by something you may be aware of the term SACRE, which is a standing advisory committee on religious education, which every local sort of council will have, so Cambridge County Council as well, which I sat on for a while, and they agree an agreed syllabus, and they overlap largely across the country, but so the known unknown, I guess, is it looks like there will be a national framework. They've only written that as a heading. I don't think they have the content yet. At the other end, I would say that there is also now a national framework for teaching RE in Catholic schools, the Religious Education Directory. I won't go into it, but I have certain problems with the direction in which that's moved. Possibly to do with more definition and underlining of technicalities, rather than the question which you seem to be asking about how we can make what Gemma's written about more meaningful for people of a younger age. And I think while it's important to know the definitions of incarnation, whatever, there's more to it than that, which is perhaps what we're about.
I would also say, I mean, as somebody who's completely wedded to the Ignatian spiritual exercises, the notion of the exercises is to enable people to have an encounter with Jesus, to actually meet him through the scriptures, through their imaginations, but also through getting in touch with their deep desires. We know that every time Jesus met anybody in the New Testament, their lives were changed. And actually Pope Benedict wrote about this in his wonderful encyclical on hope, where he says, the Christian message is not just informative, but performative. It's something that makes things happen and is life-changing. The one who has hope lives differently. And I think if we in our schools, through, teaching young children to use their imaginations in prayer, gosh, what's not to like there? Because kids have got fabulous imaginations, even if they take them all over the place. Children are naturals for this kind of prayer, and actually for helping them to get to know the scriptures. And this time last year, I sat through a school nativity play, where I have to say, it was an allegedly religious school, and the entire nativity play was Christmas is about magic. Well, no, it's not. Christmas is about the Word of God becoming flesh and entering into our human limitations. That is not magic, that's grace. and I think we needn't be afraid to tell the story. You know, and the story speaks for itself, actually, even for people who've long ago let go of their Christian practice. If they've been taught well, they do remember the story, and something about that story speaks to them. So, you know, just also to raise with your question, David, the fact that I'm in touch with the Association of Catholic Teachers of RE. It's a body, ACTRE, and I had a long conversation with them yesterday because the government did put bursaries together to offer bursaries to people to become trained as RE teachers, because we've got a desperate shortage of RE teachers across the country. And those bursaries were taken up with considerable enthusiasm. The government has just cut the bursaries. So I think all of us need actually to write to our MP and say, we really do need people who have a religious intelligence. You know, we talk about people having an emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence. I think in this day when religions are being weaponized against each other, we need more than ever people well taught by well-trained teachers, and cutting the government bursary to this is an own goal of monumental proportions. And I'd love to see people actually write in to their MP and say, please don't do this. You know, we really do need to support the teaching of high quality RE in schools. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Another David. A couple of disparate thoughts. We've had a new Pope this year, and we've had a new king not so very long ago. Wasn't it wonderful, vis-a-vis what you're all about, that they prayed together in the Sistine Chapel just a week or two ago. That's the first thing. Where is that going vis-a-vis Catholicism and the Church of England? Perhaps you have, because as you said, you have a ringside view of what's been going on down at Amber's Palace. Secondly, the Holy Land. Jesus came into the world, and of all places, that is the place, when he comes again, that he needs, that needs to be affected by his resurrection, or his coming again. It's not going to happen though, is it? Because one side does not believe that it's Jesus, the Son of God, coming into the world to save us.
Again, I was a modern linguist before I was a theologian. And the great thing about speaking a language is you don't try and find a literal translation word for word. You try to actually find words that convey the meaning that you're trying to say. So, you know, if you said in French, it's raining cats and dogs, they would sort of look up looking for where the chihuahuas are falling out of the sky. You know, they wouldn't know what we meant. You would find the way that the French say that and say it in their own way. And in the same way, I think for interfaith dialogue, what we need is to find the points of connection. And, you know, every chapter of the Quran starts in the name of Allah, the compassionate and the merciful. And where we can start to have a dialogue about compassion and mercy and where that is needed and how we can show compassion and mercy to one another, we've at least made one step. And it's the same with our Jewish sisters and brothers. You know, when we can honour, as we do actually at Advent. I mean, Advent is probably the time when most Christians read most of the Old Testament. And, you know, to read the prophecies and to become someone who really values the Psalms and the prophets and the books of wisdom, and maybe asks our Jewish sisters and brothers to teach us something about those, because these are books that they love and honour. we have so much that unites us that we haven't remotely begun to emphasise. And in a place like this, the Wolf Institute, that's one place where this does happen. So again, it's an invitation to us all to take the opportunities that there are. Here in Cambridge, the opportunities are overwhelming.
Yeah.
So my son is going to be the donkey.
Okay.
How in your book do you bring the Ignatian spirituality through it? Is it a day one of your journey? Is this? What is the format? Do I read it all before Advent? When do I do this?
So the format of the book is just to take a piece of scripture, take a reading every day, and I've tried to, make the readings connect with something in just secular reality, so that people don't feel, they don't know where everything's coming from. And there is a reflection on the reading, and then there are some questions, some reflecting questions. And the idea of this is that it could be used in a group, and it could be used also for personal prayer and reflection. So the idea is that people are given a piece of scripture and invited to kind of reflect on it. Now, some of the scriptures are actual, stories, like on the 8th of December, I've got something about Mary, because, being a Catholic, the 8th of December is a kind of Mary Day. This wasn't going to be something where, in the name of the Bible Reading Fellowship, I did a great discourse on the Immaculate Conception. But, I've actually spoken about Mary in the scriptures to invite people to think about her, and maybe to invite people to think about the various moments when she speaks. What's she actually talking about? What does that say to me? When she talks about God pulling princes down from their thrones and raising up the lowly, feeding the starving with good things and sending the rich away empty, what does that mean to me? So each time it's asking those kind of slightly provocative questions, but also it's trying to connect maybe people whose scriptural knowledge isn't huge with the meaning of the scripture, and at the same time, I just see here that on the 9th of December, I'm talking about the wolf dwelling with the lamb and the leopard lying down with the kid, but I'm also connecting with the film Avatar, because actually Avatar is a sort of secular dream of a land where everything works together. So I'm saying, look, we've got lots of pointers in the secular world as well as in the biblical world about God's dream for a world which is in tune with itself. So it's not a strictly speaking, it doesn't have a strict Ignatian framework, but I think it takes an Ignatian look at how can we imagine ourselves into the scriptures in a way that helps us get more deeply into Advent and Christmas.
Thank you. So I think if we just round up here, one last question, Gemma, just in terms of what you hope maybe readers might take away from the book, but also maybe what you learned, going back, doing the study for it, just maybe one or two.
I think, I have as I say in the book, I have a very, very ambivalent attitude to Advent, because I always love that it's coming, and I always feel a total failure before I've even started, because it's one of the busiest times of the year, and I know that I'm never going to have enough time to do this. So I think for me, having time earlier in the year to get into these scriptures was like having a little pre-Advent all my own, and that was lovely. But I also keep trying to reassure people in the book, look, if you've only got 5 minutes, it's enough. It's okay. God will take whatever you can give, and will give you grace upon grace for whatever you've been able to give. And I'm embarrassed to say this in front of a genuine biblical scholar here, because I'm not a biblicist, but it just reminded me how you can never, never, never say, I've read this passage enough times, because there's always something new in it. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.